A perfectly clean, aesthetically pleasing dark wooden altar with a huge cast iron or copper cauldron, 10 different tarot decks, herbs hanging from the ceiling in the kitchen to dry, a slow life, perfectly in tune with nature and synchronized with the moon phases, casting spells by candlelight every single evening that of course perfectly manifest and that are cast with impeccable tools that cost thousands of euros or dollars. If you think about a witch, that is probably what social media will present to you and what a lot of people strive to be. But that is not at all the case for every single witch. So in an effort to paint witchcraft in a more realistic light, I will try to de-influence witchcraft for you today. Have fun! So first of all, let's start with altars and witchcraft workspaces, because I think that is probably the thing that is most displayed online, even though there are a lot of people who actually think that you should not show your altar online because I don't know why. The fact is that a lot of people like to show their altars online. Of course, I also like to do that, and we all appreciate a good aesthetically pleasing altar. Whenever I see an aesthetically pleasing altar on Instagram, I will double tap to like it. I'm not necessarily against that. I love having an aesthetically pleasing altar myself, but the reality does not usually look like what it does on social media, and that is what this video is here for. So I will tell you a little bit about my personal practice. You know, I am an ADHD witch. I am a little bit of a chaotic witch, and I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call myself an on and off witch because I am always a witch and I always believe in it, and that will always stay the case. But I'm not necessarily known for casting spells all the time and for doing all the stuff all the time. So I do take breaks, and sometimes they are a little bit longer. And with that, my witchcraft workspace also sometimes gets very, very dusty. Sometimes it is full of cat hair, and I would say it is clean less often than it is dirty and chaotic. It also happens quite a lot that I put something on my witchy workspace, not on my altar. That is different because I'm tending an altar for a spirit or a deity, and I wouldn't put my dirty socks on that. But it does happen sometimes. Right now, literally right now, there is a glass on my witchcraft workspace that does not belong there. There is a charger for my camera battery that does not belong there. There is a lamp and a candle holder that do not belong there. So sometimes, yes, it does happen, and it happens a lot, that my altar or my witchy workspace gets dirty, gets chaotic. It happens more often than I would like to admit. And also, yes, my altars that I do tend to, they also get dusty, because fact is, there are 6 cats living in this house. There is a lot of cat hair. So if I wanted to keep it clean all the time, I would have to clean it every single day. And I'm not a person who does something every single day. I'm not a routine person. I'm an ADHD person, so I will forget. And with that comes dirt on altars and witchy workspaces, and my altar a lot of the time is not very aesthetically pleasing. You know, the only time you really see it is when I film on there, or when I film an altar tour or like a witchy workspace tour, or if I redecorate it or something like that. And of course, in those times, it will be clean, but that's not usually reality. Right now, it is very chaotic. Stuff is lying around everywhere. There's a stack of books in front of it that has nothing to do with witchcraft. Just because you see altars and witchcraft spaces online that are perfectly clean and aesthetically pleasing, that is not always the reality. Also, about something that goes on altars, offerings. I don't like to admit it, but yes, I had offerings go moldy. I had offerings go stale. I have forgotten about offerings for multiple days. Just the last time that I gave an offering to the house spirit, I forgot about it for I think 4 days. And luckily it didn't mold, but let's just say it did not look very aesthetically pleasing anymore. So I mean, if you are a person who always remembers to take off the offerings in time, then perfect, that's great for you. I don't. That's reality. That's just reality. And also, talking about tools on altars and witchy workspaces, not everyone has these fancy tools. You know, you will usually see fancy, huge altar spaces on the internet because that is what gets the likes, that is what gets the views and the clicks and the clout. So of course that is what people share. You will rarely see like a very, very tiny, maybe a beginner's altar space that literally only has like 2 candles and a crystal and maybe a grimoire on it. That's usually not what you see, because that's not what people want to see. And the thing is that algorithms on social media favor what people want to see. And what people want to see is aesthetically pleasing stuff. Expensive fancy tools, huge ritual knives. You only see what the algorithm favors, and that is rarely the simple stuff. Also, some people don't even have an altar or a witchy workspace because, for example, they're broom closeted or whatever, and that is totally fine. Next up, let's talk about spellcasting. I have said that quite a lot in my videos. I'm not a person who is constantly casting spells, simply because, and I know that is a huge privilege, I don't really have the need to, like in my personal day-to-day life, I don't really need to cast a lot of spells. If I wanted, I could cast a million spells, but first of all, I don't have to. And second, I don't have the energy to do so. I don't want to, and nobody has to. We of course see a lot of spell work online. That's because, again, it is showy and people want to show off their spell work, the cool candles burning down or whatever. But reality probably is people don't cast spells all of the time. And you don't have to do that either. You don't have to cast spells pretty frequently to call yourself a witch. You don't have to cast a spell once a week or every day to call yourself a witch. That's not necessary. Also, not every fucking spell is a candle spell. What you usually see online, again, is the physical stuff, because that's what people can show off. There are so many spells that either don't include any tools or like any material, or that just don't look as aesthetically pleasing or as showy as a fancy candle spell, for example. Because that's, again, what people like to see, so that's what people are showing online. All cool and stuff, but that leads to people not really thinking outside the box. And I have caught myself doing that. I have seen so many candle spells online that whenever I wanted to cast a spell, I instantly went to a candle spell, because that's what I always saw. But that's not always the right or the most efficient way to cast a spell. A candle spell is not applicable to every single thing, yet because you see it so much online, that's usually what people go to, because that's what's in front of their mind, basically, because they see it all the time. But fact is, you can cast a lot of spells without any tools. You can cast a lot of spells that are less showy, but just as effective. But the thing is, you just can't properly show them online or on video. And that's why people don't really post about it. If they wanted to tell you about a spell that they cast without any tools, it would just be them blabbering. And usually people don't really want to see that. People want to see the cool, aesthetically pleasing, showy stuff. That's why people usually don't really show other things. But there you can cast a lot of different kinds of spells. Also, again, you don't have to cast them with fancy tools or in a highly decorated space. That's all not necessary. But yes, sometimes my spells also just look like a little candle, a couple of herbs, maybe an oil, lighting it, and that's it. So spell work a lot of times is much more simple than it does look like on social media. Okay, next up, baneful work, hexing and cursing. It has been kind of a taboo topic for a long time on social media. People didn't really talk about it. People kind of condemned it. That was the time when people were still very much love and light. This is kind of wearing off at the moment, and people are more open about talking about baneful work, and I love that, because that's just a part of reality, so we kind of de-influenced ourselves there. But fact is, right now there's kind of a lot of fear-mongering around it, out and about on social media. And again, that makes sense, because what the algorithms, especially short-form content like TikTok or Reels, favors is the drama. And what is the drama is, oh, I was hexed, or oh, I was cursed, or I hexed someone, and stories like that. Or videos where people are like overly concerned about protections and tell you to have like 5 million different wards because everyone is out there to hex and curse you. And that's just not the case. Chances are people around you aren't even magical practitioners. Chances are they don't know that you're a practitioner. Chances are that people don't even have a reason to hex or curse you. It's not like there are 5 million magical practitioners out there just waiting to hex or curse you. That's just not reality. It happens way more rarely than people make it out to be. Like at the moment with this fear mongering, it always seems like you have to have like 50 million wards to be able to protect yourself. And I think that stems in part from the fact that, of course, if you are a creator online, especially if you have your face online like I do, you need more protections than a normal day-to-day person, because there are a lot of people who also just subconsciously, without even knowing it, project the evil eye on you, or they actually just dislike your content so much that they will try to hex or curse you. I think that does happen. So I think if you are a person that is publicly online, on social media, doing their stuff, even if you try to be liked by everyone, you won't. So I think if you are a person on social media, you do need more protection than a day-to-day person. But that's also why I think a lot of creators show protection spells so much, because they need them. So of course, if they show something that they do and they do a lot of protection work, then of course it will look like on social media like everyone needs so much protection. But fact is, you don't. And I think that having too many wards and too many protections up is actually doing more harm than good. I think if you put too many wards up, you will cut yourself off from just the natural flow of energy. You will cut yourself off from spirits and deities. At least if you put wards up that are completely shutting you off from everything, it can happen that you are cutting spirits off, that you're cutting deities off, and that you're asking yourself, why do I not receive signs anymore? Why does communication not work anymore? And things like that. So I think too much protection does more harm than good. Yeah, it just seems on social media like you need 5 million different protective spells, but you really don't. Also, I think another reason why people show so many protection spells online is because it is pretty beginner friendly. People usually say, do protective spells as the first thing you can do. Agree, it is a good thing to start as a beginner. But because beginner content usually does very well, that's also usually what you will see online, because again, people post what the audience wants to see. And that's usually beginner content, even though everyone shouts, I want more advanced stuff. The advanced stuff usually does very badly on social media. So with that, people post a lot of beginner stuff, and with that comes a lot of protection spells. But to de-influence you, no, I don't have 5 million wards, and I don't think that everyone is out there to get me, and that's just not the case. That's such a only on social media, chronically online kind of topic. Okay, next. Moon phases. I think people really want to be in tune with the moon phases and always do something, always cast a spell on the full moon, always do divination on the new moon. And I know that feeling because I really want to get there as well. I think it's pretty aspiring to get to a point where you're so in sync with the moon phases that you're always using them in some kind of form, or like not using them, but like the energies are already there. So it kind of makes sense to work off of them if they are already there. So I'm also a person who would like to get to that point. But fact is, most people aren't. Most people forget about full and new moons. At least I do. A lot. I have even put them on my calendar so that I don't forget, but I will still forget about them. Or I will not forget about them, I will plan something for the full or the new moon, and then the day rolls around and I'm low energy, I have a migraine, or I just don't feel like doing anything, I want to do something else. I kind of feel like it's pushed a lot to like be in sync with the moon phases and use all of the moon phases for everything and time all of your spells with the moon phases, with the full and the new moons. But I think fact is, a lot of people aren't in sync with it. A lot of people don't even want to, so it's not something you have to do. And most people do not properly stick to it. That was a short one. Something else that I think is very important to de-influence, and that's psychic senses. You will see these very, very talented mediums and psychics on social media that talk about their spirit encounters and their psychic senses and their mediumship. And it always makes it seem like it's so easy. It always makes it seem like they are literally seeing spirits, like they would be corporeal in front of them, or as if they are actually like hearing every single word that they are saying, and they have like a fluent conversation with them like they do with another human. I doubt that that's always the case, at least for me. Yes, I also talk about spirit communication and my psychic senses and stuff. And yes, I do perceive some stuff. But first of all, I don't see spirits. I don't hear spirits. Nothing like that. It is very, very low key for me. And I usually only sense stuff and perceive stuff with my psychic senses when I'm focused on it, when I'm meditating, when I'm actively opening myself up to it. I'm not constantly running around being like, oh, there's a spirit, there's a spirit, and there's a spirit, and there's a spirit. Most people don't go about their day constantly feeling the energies and the spirits around them. Of course, there are people like that. Not saying that there aren't, and I'm not saying that anyone is lying. But for most people, that won't be the case. For most people, using their psychic senses will be kind of low-key and will be hard work. So while there are these hyper-talented mediums and psychics who probably also put a lot of work in those senses, while for those it can be very flashy, for most people it will be more underwhelming than anything else. Also, I think because, again, content on social media is visual content, videos and photos, it always makes it seem a little bit different than it actually is. It's usually skits. So people are reenacting what it felt like to them. So they might show themselves dressed up as the spirit or something. And people will think, oh, so they actually saw the spirit like it was another human. They saw what they were dressed like and they heard the entire conversation like they were talking to another human. But that's usually just for the skit, so it's not actual reality that it does work like this. Again, for some people it might, but for most people it won't. So I think it's very important to emphasize that if you want to work with your psychic senses, if you want to get into spirit communication and things like that, don't expect it to be as flashy, because for most people it's not. And then keeping with that topic of spirit and deity communication, again, don't expect it to be that flashy. Don't expect books to fly from the bookshelves all the time. Don't expect them to influence physical reality. Usually that doesn't happen. Yes, it does sometimes happen. Most of the time, it's not. Most of the time, the spirits don't have enough oomph to actually manipulate physical reality. So the fact that a spirit is able to throw a book off a bookshelf, that's already quite impressive. Most spirits can't do that, and a lot of spirits also don't want to do that. So don't expect stuff like that to happen all the time. Also, if you are in contact with a deity, don't expect them to be around 24/7. People, of course, only talk about the positive experiences that they had with deities. So they will talk about the biggest signs that they saw, but chances are there might be weeks or months between these big encounters. So if you get into deity work and you see all of the conversations online, you might think, oh, if I start working with a deity, I will see signs all the time and there will be so much happening and I will constantly be communicating. But chances are that will not be the case. At least for me, that is not the case. Sometimes I go months without speaking to any deities, and that's perfectly fine. But of course, that's not something you usually talk about on social media, because who wants to talk about, or who wants to hear about the time where nothing happens? Nobody wants to do that. So people, of course, tend to share only the cool experiences that they had, and that might make it seem like there is so much going on, when in actuality, it's maybe like one big encounter and then there's weeks of nothing and then another big sign. Don't expect it to be everything all the time. All right, and then lastly, because my camera already cut me off because I was blabbering on for too long, let's talk about divination and dreams. I think that is something that I can perfectly de-influence, because I'm such a bad divinator? That's not the word. Diviner. I'm such a bad diviner. I go through phases where I divine a lot, and there are phases where I don't divine at all. I think I haven't picked up, oh, wrong. I just picked up my tarot deck last week, but before that, I think I hadn't picked up my divination tools for like half a year, because there wasn't really a reason to do so. I know there are the tarot people out there who ask their tarot about every single thing, but that's at least not the case for me. I mean, I do like to use my divination tools for communication purposes, for example, but I'm not a person who will use that every single time they have a question about their daily, day-to-day life. Also, there are people who don't use divination tools at all. Not everyone has 5 million different tarot decks. I do have, I think, 2, but I only use 1. So you don't need 5 million different divination tools or rune sets. You also don't have to work with 10 different systems. If you have one divination tool that works great for you, perfect. Also, sometimes I have no clue what my reading is meant to tell me. Sometimes I look at a reading and I'm like, I have no fucking clue what this means. And that's normal. That's normal. It's just as normal. I forgot to say that about spell work. It's just as normal as having spells not manifest, or having spells go a different way that you intended to. But sometimes spells just don't do anything because maybe you fucked it up. And that even happens to someone who has been practicing for 9 years. I think it has been 9 years at this point. Crazy. But that is totally normal. That's not just a beginner thing. You will sometimes look at a reading and you will be like, I have no clue what this means. And sometimes you will cast a spell and it will do absolutely nothing. And sometimes you will call out to a deity or a spirit and absolutely nothing will happen. But you don't see this on social media usually. Again, because why should people be talking about the cases where nothing happens? Nobody's interested in that. Talking about nothing happening. I would love to be a person who has like cool psychic dreams or who communicates with spirits and deities in their dreams, but I have really tried, but I don't remember my dreams 99% of the time. I think I do dream, because my fiancé says I mumble in my sleep. I do say stuff in my sleep, so apparently there is something happening, but I maybe remember my dreams once every 2 weeks, maybe once a month. I don't remember a lot of my dreams. And usually they are very, very mundane dreams, but like nothing fancy happening there. So I'm just really not a dream diviner or dream worker at all. I have lucid dreamt once on accident. I know it's cool and I know people do talk about it and talk about like dream interpretation and the crazy signs that they got and the crazy communication that happened in their dreams. But for a lot of people, that's not reality. For a lot of people, nothing happens, especially if you are a person who's like very stressed, constantly just in like survival mode, then chances are that you will just not remember your dreams because you can't relax enough. But yeah, dreams, nothing really happening there for me. I know that's pretty boring and that's why a lot of people don't talk about that, but nothing happening for me in my dreams, sadly. I would love there to be stuff happening, but reality looks different. Without that being said, I hope I was able to de-influence witchcraft a little bit. I hope that this reaches a lot of beginners, because I don't really want beginners to just learn witchcraft or expect witchcraft to be as it looks like on TikTok, for example, or on other kinds of social media platforms, because social media is not real life. That's the important gist of this video. On social media, people usually show what's looking great, what's aesthetically pleasing, what is showy and what sounds amazing, because that's what people click and like on social media and that's what the algorithm favors. Even if there are a lot of people sharing the not so flashy stuff or the not so aesthetically pleasing altars or tools, the algorithm will not push that. So it's unlikely that you will ever see that. So just don't expect witchcraft or any other magical practice to be like it is on social media. All right. With that being said, I hope you liked the video. If you did, make sure to subscribe and give a thumbs up and ring the bell down below so that you're notified whenever I upload a new video. Feel free to check out my Instagram for my not so regular posting about my day-to-day life and sometimes about witchcraft and sometimes about Norse paganism. And if you want to support this channel, that would be much appreciated. In case you want to check out my Patreon or my YouTube membership. And I will see you in another video. Bye!